If Penn State nails this coaching hire, it would put the rest of the Big Ten on notice.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That is right. It is a Locked On crossover to look across the Big Ten Conference as we do every week on our respective channels. My name is Seyko, and I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. He is Jacob Goins. He's got you covered daily for the Indiana Hoosiers, Locked On Hoosiers host, as we're going to make our Week 11 predictions for the Big Ten slate. We're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings. It's not important to Penn State, but Indiana, should they be number one? But we got to discuss Penn State's coaching search and how the board is shifting in real time. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Friendly reminder to let us know your thoughts down in the comments section and be a part of the conversation. Now let's talk Penn State's head coaching search. And it's getting interesting because there are the rumors that they told Urban Meyer no, and it's like, whoa. And then Auburn gets into the mix. So this is more of a coaching carousel conversation in general. Again, James Franklin being linked so strongly to Virginia Tech. A lot to hit on here. I guess I want to know the Indiana perspective. Which coach would concern you the most, or say, you know what, hey, Penn State's going to be right back at the top when names like Jeff Brohm from Louisville thrown around? Apparently Brent Key and Penn State were meeting for an in-person interview. Again, that's the rumor, and there are some flight trackers out there that saw, hey,
the old flight trackers, man. It's that time of year.
Yep. There's a flight tracker showing from State College to just outside of Atlanta, and Georgia Tech's on a bye. And then again, that's been reported that, hey, there was an in-person interview being set up. So Jeff Brohm, Brent Key, Brian Hartline still going to be a favorite one of my candidates on this list. Yeah. Mike Elko is going to be my top one, but I know that one's just not as realistic because, hey, Texas A&M's the third seed in the college football playoff right now. I imagine you're going to say Elko. If Penn State were able to pull that off, it's like, man, Penn State really won this coaching search.
I think that's a sneaky good candidate, but it's not the one that comes to mind. You said it already. Brian Hartline is the guy that I think is an up-and-comer head coach, not in terms of like, oh, he's just a measly little ball boy or quarterbacks coach. He's clearly good at what he does at one of the best positions and the best teams in the country. I'm saying he's one of those guys that's destined to be one of the best coaches in the game. He reminds me of a Dan Lanning style where you see him rise through the ranks and you just know that it's going to be good, right? And you know when he gets a shot at a big name school, it's going to work out. And I think Brian Hartline is that guy. So I think that would be a home run hire for Penn State. I love Brent Key. I know he's going to be floating around for possibly the LSU job, maybe even the Florida job, the Auburn job, right? All those teams down there in the South. You have those obviously closer. He's got the recruiting connections already down there. But my goodness, you talk about somebody who would come in and reestablish the precedent of Penn State football, hard-hitting discipline. We're just going to knock you out cold every single game. That's Brent Key, dude. And if you don't watch Georgia Tech football, please go do it because they're not sexy. They're not high-flying, but they win ball games. That's just what they do. And they're all close, but they're never in doubt. That's what makes Georgia Tech so good, and that's what makes Brent Key such an intriguing hire. So that's the question, right? From the Indiana perspective and just the Big Ten kind of zooming out is, man, this is a scary situation because I believe Penn State, and I'm sure you do too, they're one coach away from actually winning national championships. And James Franklin had every chance to do it, and he clearly couldn't, so he lost his job. But it's like, dude, Penn State's got it all. I personally think Florida's the same way. LSU's clearly the same way. The previous three head coaches all won national titles before Brian Kelly. Auburn could be in that category too. And we're not even talking about the other P4 jobs that are open out there, UCLA, Oklahoma State, etc. So I say all of that to say this is a scary coaching search for Penn State, because if they do find the right guy, they'll reestablish recruiting, they'll reestablish winning, they'll get the money they need. They've got the resources already and clearly the fan base that backs them. This is scary because if they find the right guy, Penn State could be a huge threat once again in college football and in the Big Ten. But those couple of guys I named earlier are ones that would kind of worry me if Penn State ends up landing one. But they're going to get somebody. I mean, this isn't going to be, I think, a situation that Penn State announces a hiring and it's like, no. I don't know. That
would have been Matt Rule, but
I agree.
He's staying at
Totally
Nebraska.
Totally agree. That would have been a very underwhelming hire, in my opinion.
Or Manny Diaz.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Manny Diaz guy either. I don't know how people would react to Mike Elko. And I know you've been on him since almost the beginning of all of this a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. I think it would be a good hire, but it wouldn't be the splash sexy hire. Because if you remember, it wasn't really a splash sexy hire when Texas A&M brought him in. It was like,
now
that's a good hire.
But now
it is now. That's exactly right. So maybe it would be different at Penn State. I don't know. But this won't be a Brian Kelly to LSU thing. You remember when that happened? It was like, really? Brian Kelly to LSU, the guy who has been in the Mid-East?
Lincoln Riley to USC.
Exactly. I don't think Penn State falls into that trap because those situations have not worked. Lincoln Riley, the fact that he's still employed is baffling to me, and Brian Kelly is not. So I trust and believe Penn State will get it right this time.
An alleged minimum $80 million buyout will do that in Lincoln Riley's case at USC. Again, they don't have to fully report it, but that's the understanding that it could be 80 to upwards of $100 million for the buyout. So that's why he's still there, because you want to talk about
crazy.
leverage, holding all the cards. It's that kind of thing. But I don't think Penn State could go. I think that Jeff Brohm becomes the more likely candidate day by day. Again, it's going to be tough to get him away from his alma mater, but Penn State's going to force coaches and programs like they did with Indiana and Curt Cignetti to make a move now. Again, Jacob, do you notice how these programs, Curt Cignetti and Indiana, get an extension done? But no extension between Louisville and Brohm. No extension between Brent Key and Georgia Tech. No extension between Mike Elko and Texas A&M. Who everybody tells me that's impossible. That's not happening. Never. In your dreams, dude. Kalen DeBoer in Alabama. If these coaches, because they're all due extensions.
Oh, snap.
They're all due extensions. If they're so enamored with their programs and vice versa, why don't they have a deal done? Curt Cignetti in Indiana took care of business. Why don't they have a deal done?
Damn right they did. They said, we're not letting that happen. Heck no. We're not letting Penn State or anybody come in. And I think Indiana wanted to keep Cignetti regardless. But when big jobs start opening up, you do what you have to do. I'm curious on what you think, Zach. And I know we got to get to our week 11 predictions coming up later in the show. But do you think that this cycle will finally have a team or a couple of teams and organizations put their foot down to massive buyouts? Because Penn State's paying one right now. You've got take Auburn, who's paying their second or third coach now in buyouts. Brian Kelly at LSU's getting paid. Like, do you think this is the cycle where college football organizations finally step up and say, you know what? We're not going to sign you to a 5-year deal with 80% of it guaranteed. And if we fire you to literally not work, we're not paying you $50 million. No, you can earn it. We'll sign you on a 2-year deal. You can earn more money as you progress and win games. Do you think that it finally happens given all the money that's being paid out right now?
I mean, you got to think so, right? It's kind
I hope so.
There's an equal opposite. So especially in the case of somewhere like Auburn, because they're now paying 3 different coaches to not coach at their respective institution. It's kind of the same thing with Florida. Eventually, you only have, see, here's where Penn State's in a favorable situation per se, is that they're not paying multiple different coaches. Even LSU's in that instance with Coach O, Ed Orgeron, who they have to pay a buyout for. It's not as massive, but they're still paying somebody to not lead their program. And with James Franklin entertaining potentially Virginia Tech, and I say, hey, don't count out Auburn and Florida. I think he's biding his time because he doesn't truly want VT, even though social media is ablaze and it's James Franklin. We got your former coach. We're laughing at you. And it's like, you might not. You don't understand how these things work. I I understand what his agent is trying to do, and he very well is, and James Franklin, does he really want to settle in the ACC, or does he believe that he's an SEC Big Ten head coach? That's all I'm saying. I don't think his ego's gotten that far yet to accept that realization. With that said, Penn State might not even be in a position where they're owing millions and millions of dollars to James Franklin, because if he takes on another job, then they don't have to pay. They have to pay less of a buyout in that situation. So that's where the coaching search for Penn State gets interesting, because then they might have an unfiltered war chest to where they can go right back in it with a new fresh look and outlook for this program, and not have money tied up in all these different places, which is going to hurt Auburn, LSU, and Florida, and make it less attractive jobs in comparison to Penn State. Again, that's why they're saying no to Urban Meyer, because I think that Penn State understands that they're the best job on the market, and it's not that close in this cycle. So with that being said, the college football playoff rankings are out. Well, Penn State, this doesn't matter to Penn State this year, but Indiana, were they snubbed? Should they have been number one? Well, you can make the argument that they have the better resume. That's coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets plus everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. So if you think somebody's going to score X amount of points, or somebody's going to have a higher PRA, or you think somebody's just going to knock down a handful of threes, you can do all of that together with FanDuel. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The college football playoff rankings again for Penn State. Okay, but this is for Big Ten. This is for Big Ten fans. Hey, you own it. Honestly, I should let you drive this segment, because I'll kick my feet up and let you do the rest here. But Indiana at number 2, Ohio State is at number 1, Indiana's at number 2, and Oregon. I have to continue to remind myself that they are in the Big Ten. Well, I should know that because they use Penn State as a stepping stone to get to the top of the Big Ten. But 3 Big Ten teams get number 1, number 2, and number 9 in the playoff rankings. And let's just start there. Did the committee get it right with Indiana being number 2 and Ohio State being number 1? I say so. Now, it's very close, but they do that win over Texas is still very important, being a non-conference victory. And then Ohio State has just bludgeoned everybody else along the way, including Penn State. But Indiana, you still have the credibility for defeating an Iowa, an Oregon team convincingly. So you can't go wrong one way or another. But Ohio State being the defending national champ, I think I got to go with them still as the number 1 team, as much as it pains me to say it.
Yeah, and look, I think there was a legitimate argument for Indiana to be the number 1 team in the country, and I still think they are the best team in the country, to be quite honest with you, but I'm also a firm believer, Zach, that the number 1 team in any rankings, I don't care if it's the AP poll, college football playoff, I don't care if it's a power ranking, whatever the case may be, the number 1 team should not be removed from that spot until you lose a ball game. I don't care if you win by 50 or you win by 1. If you're the number 1 team and you win your games, you're still the number 1 team in my book. But I think Indiana's the best team in the country. I know the win for Ohio State over Texas isn't great. It's pretty good. Texas beat a number 6 ranked team, Oklahoma, a couple of weeks ago, so the win got a lot better. But I think Indiana's a better team. I think the resume is better, and I think they have a better chance to win a national championship. Now, in the grand scheme of things, you got to play the teams on your schedule, and then eventually you got to play the teams in front of you in the college football playoff. But Indiana as the 2 seed, I'm cool with for now. We'll see what happens if these 2 teams went out, if they play in a Big Ten championship game, kind of how that impacts things. But if you look at Indiana's draw, if it were to end today, Ohio State would play the winner of Oregon or Texas Tech. Indiana would play the winner of Notre Dame and BYU. I think BYU's talented. I think they're kind of scary, but I think Indiana's a better team.
Yeah.
Notre Dame could be a possible rematch in the college football playoff
fun.
from a year ago, right?
Ton of
Where
fun.
Indiana goes to Notre Dame. I'm not a believer in the Irish. I think they're in because their logo, to be quite honest with you. So did they get it right for the most part? Sure. But Indiana's going to have every chance to have a say-so down the stretch. And I'm happy that they're the 2 seed for now.
And remember, Notre Dame did lose to Miami, who is looking worse day by day, but they also lost to Texas A&M by 1 point. Now, granted, that one was at home. Notre Dame continues to impress me of how they bounce back, but their schedule is certainly it's
terrible.
It's terrible, but they get no breaks, right? With those with the non-conference, the slate that they played, every game is legit to an extent. They truly don't have any cupcakes there. But the Big Ten representation that we focus on here, it's correct the way that it is. I don't think let's just put that for anybody that's saying, well, where are the other Big Ten teams? Why isn't USC in there? Why isn't Iowa in there? None of those other teams should be even close. Oregon at number 9, I think is fair, right? The only loss is to you could make an argument that they should be slightly higher.
Sure.
Because Alabama at 7-1 with a loss to Florida State is a 4 seed. So we're going to branch outside of the Big Ten. But again, this is about the college football playoff because so I don't agree with that. Alabama, that I had to double check that. I'm like, oh, Alabama's 4. So let me tell you the playoff rankings. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, those 3 are correct. Alabama, that's a little odd to me. Georgia, Ole Miss, BYU, Texas Tech, Oregon, Notre Dame, Texas, Oklahoma. Those are the top 12, but because of the group of 5 and everything else, when you win your conference, Virginia is actually the 11 seed. Memphis is the 12 seed. So let me clarify that's what the top 12 look like in the playoff rankings. But because those schools don't win their conference title and you have the group of 5, group of 6 guarantee, which I don't like anyway, but it is what it is. That's how it looks. So which ones are odd to you? I got to go with Alabama first and foremost because that loss to Florida State. Alabama, I think, is a national title contending team, but the 4th ranking is not justified.
Well, I think I have to disagree, to be honest, because, you lost to Florida State. It was on the road, but it was in the opener. And all Alabama has done since then is rip off top 25 win after top 25 win. I believe they're the only team in the country that did it 4 times in a row, and then they escaped a win over South Carolina. They still have another ranked team on their resume or on their schedule is Oklahoma coming up in a couple of weeks. So I'm actually okay with Alabama in there. But just looking at the playoff bracket, you mentioned it, Memphis being in there, they're not even ranked in the top 25 of the college football playoff.
That's why I don't like it.
But they're the highest ranked group of 5, so they have to be in there. And it was Boise State a year ago. Right now it's Memphis. That could change because of all the chaos there. So it's fine. I'm not a believer in Virginia, but they're winning games, so you can't really argue it. And then overall, I think it's the Big Ten and the SEC and everybody else.
And that's how it is, how it's going to be, how it's been for the most part here, especially since conference realignment. Look, the ACC and the Big 12, you might not be getting any at large teams in when all said and done. I know that BYU and Texas Tech are there right now, but the analytics and BYU is consistently an underdog. I could see them. The committee wants to find a way to keep some of these other schools out as an at-large. Okay, so when I talk about this is in respect to the way that it is. It's not to disrespect the ACC and the Big 12. It's just, it is what it is. But I don't think you're getting an at-large. You might get one at-large from the Big 12. If you don't win your conference, you're not getting in from the ACC. That's why you don't see Louisville.
This year anyway, because the ACC, the depth of that conference is non-existent. Look at the Big Ten. It's not deep, but it's very top-heavy. That's the argument that the SEC has right now between Alabama, A&M, Ole Miss, Georgia. And did you notice who the first 2 teams out of the rankings are? It's Texas and it's Oklahoma. Those are called bid stealers. Those are teams that are going to try and sneak their way into the college football playoff and take it from teams like you're talking about. So don't be surprised, Big Ten fans, if the SEC gets the most teams in or has the best chances to win because they have the most opportunities. I still believe in our conference, the Big Ten, to get it done. Of course, I think Indiana will be the one to do it, but just keep an eye out for the SEC. And I think you're right. I think the ACC and the Big 12 may not be overly pleased with how this thing turns out.
I mean, the Big Ten wouldn't be either. While you and I say that, hey, we agree with the initial rankings thus far, there's going to be a group of people that say Michigan should be there, not Oklahoma. And it's honestly, even though I say that right now, as I start to think it through, hey, this is a Big Ten conversation we're having. What really does separate Michigan from Oklahoma? What really does separate? Look, I know Iowa's Iowa, right? I just don't think they're that good per the eye test. But all these teams are 6-2.
I will say Oklahoma has the head-to-head over Michigan. Don't forget the week 2 win that Oklahoma has over the Wolverines.
Yes, that one. Okay, so I'm that slipped my mind there. But Texas.
You're not going to have a ton of those, though. You won't have a ton of those conference versus conference.
Okay, so then I should say, I guess, well, then that's why Texas is ranked above Michigan as well. Michigan at 7-2, being 21st, is a little surprising to me, honestly.
Yeah, and Texas again, they got another top 10 win over Vanderbilt this weekend, which. It's Vanderbilt, I know, but they were ranked 9th in the country, and I think it was much deserved. So Texas is starting to build up their reputation again. But look, this is the first rankings, and we still have a month left of college football. They're going to change. There will be differences between now and what we see come the final rankings and the start of the playoffs. It's the same way in college basketball, right? You can't compare the bracketology in November to the bracketology in March. It doesn't make a lot of sense because there's still a lot of things to be settled.
Well, let me present this to you as we finalize this first segment here and talk about Penn State's coaching search and just the coaching carousel in general. Is that, the SEC has all these wins over ranked teams and this and that. Well, they're ranked, but imagine if that was the same case there, that USC has a ranked win over Michigan, for example, or that kind of thing where everybody's ranked. Yeah. So what if the Big Ten was like that, where they're picking up ranked wins over each other left and right? And it's like, well, it's because they were ranked. Exactly. That's my point, is that it's their rank. So they're using it as this this kind of ghost leverage, is that, well, we were ranked. Okay. But what if it was like that for the Big Ten? I'm going back to the point of the perception.
The SEC bias part of it. Yeah. Because it's a real thing. It is. And whether you agree with it or not, it's true, right? It's the fact that SEC teams get ranked more than any other conference in the country. And then you're right. They pound their chest and say, well, we beat the 22nd ranked team in the country. Well, there's probably an argument that team shouldn't have been ranked 22nd in the first place. But that's how the SEC operates and always has been, and it always will be. And there's nothing the Big Ten can do about it except keep winning national titles.
So I see why the SEC bias accusations, they're not going anywhere.
No.
So that's but these rankings are fluid, and we'll see how they adjust week by week, and we're going to talk about it week to week. With that being said, we got to get to our week 11 predictions. Penn State and Indiana play each other. Can the Nittany Lions do it? Can they actually upset a top 3 team? Well, some people are trying to make the argument that Penn State can. We'll discuss that and make our other predictions coming up next year on this Locked On Crossover. Somehow we blinked and we're here at week 11, but we enjoy making these predictions, and you should too, because for the most part, we've hit on a lot of these spreads and totals when it comes to these, but not every single time. We're not perfect, but for a majority of the time, I think we've been fairly spot on with these, and you can go back and hold us accountable. But we'll start with Penn State, Indiana, because we cover those 2 teams, but then we'll go to the other biggest game on a second in comparison, right? Oregon and Iowa at 3:30 this Saturday, plus a handful of other Big Ten games that draw some interest here now that the college football playoff rankings are officially released. Okay, Penn State, Indiana, 2-touchdown underdog. The Nittany Lions are at home. Pretty, no inclement weather or anything, and that's what we're going to be discussing for some of these other games in the Big Ten. But Jacob, I just don't see it, and we're gonna do another crossover episode to talk about it. So this is a glimpse into what the future conversation that we're gonna have. I don't think Penn State, because I don't see them making radical changes.
Yeah,
and with respect to that, if they don't make radical changes, they have no chance against an Indiana team that's going to out talent them and out coach them.
What a world. What a world we live in, that those two statements are being said, and they're true, I think. And look, I think Indiana has done it so well all season long of playing their style of football, but also being able to win in multiple ways. And whether that's Fernando Mendoza throwing it around to some of the best receivers in the country who are trying to get fully healthy, so we'll keep an eye on that, or it's just ground and pound and run the football like they did against Maryland. They can do it all, and the defense shows up every single game. Penn State's offense is clearly the issue. I think Indiana is the best defense in the country, right there with Ohio State. You can make an argument either way, and Penn State couldn't do it against that defense. They're not going to be able to do it against this defense either. I like Indiana to win, and I like them to do it pulling away, but I expect Penn State to fight for 4 quarters here like they did against the Buckeyes.
Well, if they pull away sooner rather than later, I don't know how much fight they're going to have, because the second that Ohio State started to just, foot to the gas,
third quarter, right?
Yeah, that's when Penn State, it was 24-14, and I felt like Penn State just came out completely flat-footed after that. Ohio State scores right away, and it's like, oh, whoa, we gotta go keep, step for step with them. You didn't have to.
Sure.
So I would hope that Penn State learns from its mistakes there. To make a prediction, look, I think 14 points is pretty close. That's pretty accurate. I'm thinking 31-17, something like that. Maybe a little more scoring, something, because I actually think this would go over. Again, Kurt Cignetti is not afraid to pour the points on, and there's no look-ahead spot. That was what? Wisconsin still on the schedule, Purdue, right? Penn State.
That's it. Yeah.
You can pour as much as your game plan, because Penn State's the toughest remaining team on the schedule, and that's sad when you mention and Northwestern beat Penn State, right? Purdue, excuse me.
Yeah,
so,
Wisconsin and Purdue left on our schedule. Yeah. Yes.
But in they're in the same conversation as Wisconsin and Purdue, and that's what's miserable about that. So, if it continues to extend in Indiana, 17 points, I don't think this will get to a 3 touchdown margin, but I would say something along the lines of 34-20. Like that 14-point spread is pretty tight.
Yeah, it is. And so we're excited for that game. It is big noon kickoff, but the one that most of the Big Ten will have its eyes on come Saturday, as much as it pains me to say, according to the college football playoff rankings, this is a top 25 matchup, even a top 20 matchup. Congratulations, Iowa. You got what you wanted. You're ranked for an entire week because you host Oregon this weekend. And I don't care, Seyko, that it's going to rain. I don't care if it snows. I don't care if a tornado comes through the stadium. Oregon is not losing this game. I'm not a believer in Iowa to be a top 25 team. It doesn't mean I don't think they're good. I think they are solid. They just don't know what's about to hit them in the Oregon Ducks. That is a very talented team, one that has bounced back nicely since Indiana beat them. Oregon only favored by a touchdown. Vegas may know something we don't, but I'm sticking with the Ducks. The total's 40.5 in this game. If the rain holds off or whatever weather they're calling for, Oregon may drop 40 themselves. Give me Oregon to win. Give me Oregon to cover on the road.
Well, and I'm not exactly sure. I'm not saying that Oregon is overrated in this respect, but this is certainly a team that has they've certainly gone down a couple of steps. They were in a category of, hey, and Indiana's taken that spot. They've gone to that, hey, this is a true national title contender. Oregon back to they're college football playoff contender. Look, Iowa's got a top 10 defense, but they went so close to Penn State, and we know what Penn State is at this point in time. Weather's going to be a definite implication, because if Iowa has to throw the ball in any capacity, they don't win this game. But if it's going to rain, I would still like to think that Oregon has enough of a defense and a ground game for them to travel. I would say that Iowa has a slight advantage, but the significant disadvantage, the biggest margin, the biggest gap is between Oregon and the way they can pass the football versus Iowa, who doesn't even know what a forward pass is. So I'm going to take Oregon by 2 scores if the weather does hold off. If it is a weather type of game, that's definitely a 1-score field goal type of game, because then Iowa can ugly it up.
Yeah, I don't think we need to touch Ohio State, Purdue. The Buckeyes are 30-point favorites on the road. You do have a Friday night game. Northwestern has to travel out to the Coliseum. USC favored by 2 touchdowns. USC better come to play physical because Northwestern does. Our teams know that, but I think USC will most likely get it done. Interesting spreads here quickly. Washington favored by 11.5 on the road in Madison. Maryland, Rutgers. Battle of 2 teams who have a single win in the Big Ten. That's about a 1 or 2 point spread. Mm-hmm. But is Nebraska broken? Did the last 3 weeks just completely whip up on the Cornhuskers? They are underdogs in the Rose Bowl against UCLA on Saturday night. Is something wrong here?
That's just not that good of a team, and we found out real quickly, right? This was, if they caught lightning in a bottle, they could have been a 1-loss team going into the Penn State game, and then that could have been a top 10 matchup. Oh, how fun the preseason projections are, right? But yeah, I'm fully expecting Ohio State to have no issues with Purdue. I'm fully expecting USC to have no issues with Northwestern, especially with that trip to LA. When it comes to Washington and Wisconsin, that's another one of those. It could be an ugly fest. And I don't know how Washington would do in a game where Wisconsin can ugly it up when it comes to an 11-point spread. I still like Jonah Coleman. I still like Damon Williams as 2. Coleman's a great running back, and Williams has that dual threat capability. So if Washington has to lean on that, but for them to pull away in a game where Wisconsin can get a little, get a little creative, so to speak, I think, again, if it's going to rain, Wisconsin definitely covers that. That's Oregon's only favored by 6.5 there. That's kind of what I would expect more so in a game like that, based on Washington having to travel and then the possibility of inclement weather. And you hit on UCLA and Norton, Nebraska too. I got to UCLA is just, they've gone through a gauntlet of their own since, resurfacing. Indiana, right? And Indiana's that gauntlet. So they got humbled. But Nebraska, I don't know that Nebraska is the same team now since everything that happened with Matt Rule being linked to Penn State.
Yeah, and coming off the extension, they've just not looked good. Again, the last 3 weeks for Nebraska, and I know we got to wrap up, loss at Minnesota, scraped by Northwestern, and lose to USC. You had your chances, and you blew it yet again. If you're Nebraska, it's what they do, and that's what they're best at. So, look, I'm with you. I think USC gets it done. I think Washington covers, by the way. I think Washington goes on the road and covers at Wisconsin, and you know what? For no other reason than just because I'll take Nebraska to pull off the upset against UCLA in the Rose Bowl. Why not?
Ooh. All right. I like that one. I guess we didn't exactly hit on Rutgers and Maryland real quick. 2-point spread, 58.5 point total. Rutgers at home. Maryland certainly cooled off. I'm going to go with Rutgers in this one.
I'll pick Maryland because you picked Rutgers, and that is expertise analysis right there.
That's all we need here. Fade Zach Seyko, right? That's going to do it for this Locked On crossover, where we talk the entire Big Ten Conference. He's Jacob Goins, host of Locked On Hoosiers. My name is Zach Seyko, host of Locked On Nittany Lions. Be on the lookout for our official crossover to talk Penn State and Indiana specifically, but we get to talk about them here as we look at the Big Ten Conference in an expanded way. Make sure you subscribe to both of our YouTube channels and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around Penn State and Indiana, respectively. Jacob, thank you so much for the time. Can't wait to do it again next week.
Yep, always appreciated, and maybe we'll still be friends after what happens in Happy Valley this weekend.